Hi, I'm Tehi Nam, and excited that you're able to participate in our webinar and want to use this opportunity to introduce Jeff Gray. I'm really excited to have Jeff come and share his thoughts because we work closely together at Honeycomb, where Jeff played a key role in Honeycomb's 100x growth from a half a million ARR to 50 million in ARR. At Honeycomb, Jeff led finance, operations, and RevOps, and his financial model and forecasts were instrumental to managing the growth at Honeycomb. So I'm excited to have him come and share with you how he built his financial model, why he built it, and how he used it. And also during this process, feel free to ask Jeff any questions you may have over chat as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks for the kind intro, Tahi, and good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to share my screen here. Um, Let me know if we're good on the slides. Good morning. So um, Here today to talk about planning for startups. And I used a crystal ball on this front slide because we're trying to predict the future here with planning for startups, trying to forecast the future finances of our company. And of course, that's impossible because none of us have a crystal ball and none of us know the future. And so the key to this is making good assumptions about the future, documenting them, checking them, and then repeating that, iterating on that process and learning about the business. So make a plan, break the plan, repeat. I'll quote the 34th president. In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. This is an analogy. I'm using a war analogy for startups. I've also heard people talk about emergency rooms, blood all over the place or chaos or shit shows. But there is a lot of change and a lot of chaos and a lot of uncertainty. It's inherent in what y'all are trying to do. In working with founders, I find that most of you have a really good view of what's happened because you know the business and you live it. Also because your bookkeepers tell you from a financial perspective with the P&L, et cetera. And in terms of what's next, you probably have a great view of where you want to go long term. What's the vision of the company? How we're going to take the market, the impact we're going to have on the market when we're the leader. But in the middle, it gets messy. And so questions like, are we spending money too fast? Are we growing too slowly? Or are we going to risk not growing fast enough to capture the market and be one of the leaders? We're trying a bunch of stuff. Is it enough? Do we have enough experiments out in the field? Sort of ticking down a level. Do engineering and sales have the same view of what good is? Thinking about investments. Should we hire 5 reps or 10 engineers? They're both good ideas. And how do I trade them off against each other? As founders, especially in smaller companies, generally, I'm sure you have a very good sense of your business to make these decisions well, but all of just decisions we make are better informed by data. And as we scale, how do you keep making decisions well as you get farther from the ground truth? And how do you equip your team as you make a smaller and smaller percentage of the decisions over time? How do you equip your team to make decisions as well or better than you will and feel comfortable with that process? So how does this all scale? These decisions we're making about what to do, what not to do, when to do it. So my experience in Honeycomb, like he said, I was there for a long time. I just left about 6 months ago as the COO, and we used our plans and our models and forecasts in both kind of short-term tactical and in kind of longer-term strategic ways. So this is a snapshot of one of the outputs of the kind of plans we'll be talking about, a sales productivity model. You can see various ways of looking at salesperson, account executive attainment. You can see in this example, it's going down. A few years ago, when I first started working with you, Tehi, we looked at our business and saw that sales productivity in this way and sales attainment wasn't where we thought it was going to be. And so go-to-market efficiency wasn't there. We had plans to hire a bunch more reps to grow because we wanted to grow more next year. But we were able to look at this data, and it gave us an early warning system to show that was going to be throwing good money after bad. And what we did is we gave us the courage to have the uncomfortable conversation with our sales leader and say, we're going to stop sales hiring right now because it's good money after bad. That bought us time and a couple of quarters of runway. What happened is we closed some big expansions, which sort of changed the dynamics of the model and bought us time to grow the business in a stable, repeatable way.
Yeah, and I would just want to echo that because for me, that was really critical and appreciative what Jeff did with his early warning system. And the best way for me is to contrast it with some other companies where Their financial model was not as complete, or at least their understanding of their financial model is not as complete. So the company then would wait until they actually missed a quarter. So they missed ARR, but in the meantime, they would continue to ramp their go-to-market spend. And as a result, that resulted in several $1 million of extra burn and shortening the zero cash date. And that put us in a very difficult situation, the company. And so what Jeff, with this model, able to do was sort of pause the hiring of sales reps, had a big impact, which, as I said, some of the other companies I work with were not able to do.
Awesome. Thanks.
And so maybe with that, Jeff, you could talk more about, also about your approach of how you build the financial plan, because it's different than what I typically see with other CFOs or COOs.
For sure. Let me give one other example quickly, which is sort of less about risk management and more about being able to grow aggressively. And so a couple of years later, business was a bit more stable and a bit more repeatable. But we got together at a management meeting. We were able to use our plans and models to have a high confidence assumption that if we didn't change anything about our product surface area and our business, we weren't going to get to our revenue goals next year. We just weren't selling the core product fast enough, not enough leads, too slow and too long. And we made the decision that we needed to have more product in market. And this eventually became Honeycomb Telemetry Pipeline, which the company launched last year and has been successful. But what this thinking let us do is let us say we need more in the market because of our sales cycle is so long. We need in the market by this date, October 2024 or whatever, and it ended up being. Therefore, we need to invest in more engineers now. Therefore, we need to invest in this white label partnership. We are very used to building everything ourselves. We're going to invest in this white label partnership to have products to take at market faster. We're going to take those risks, which are risks about the way we build product and about our product roadmap, et cetera, in order to have the right bets in the field, to have something in market in time to hit our goals the next year. And that led to us sort of rallying the company around, we're going to get this product out to market quickly, and we're going to iterate on it there. And we need to be able to take down enough of our TAM to be able to hit our goals. So it let us not just manage risk and don't run out of cash, which is the most important thing, but later it let us make kind of more strategic go no go decisions on some bigger bets and some bigger swings. Um, I'll get to how in a second, but just plug for what you get when you do it. You get an early warning system. We touched on that. You get your judgment about we're about to have a problem informed by data. Problems could be not enough revenue, not enough cash, not enough efficiency, not enough conversion. Only a few people are doing all the things. You get an early warning system in time to adjust. And the other thing you get when you do this well, which I think reduces stress for founders and leaders, is you're able to tell a story of predictable growth. Board decks are easier. This stuff spits out metrics for your board decks if you do this well. Tehi wants to know, I think, when he shows up to a board meeting, he wants to know how did you do compared to last period and what's the trend? How did you do compared to your plan? And how do you think you're going to do? And we can make all that pretty easy to do. You can tell an easier fundraising story too, because investors want to know the same thing. Potential investors, they want to know where is it going. And for yourself, and I don't underestimate the sort of psychological drain of running a small company and sort of asserting that we're going to make it out into the world, increase your confidence that the things you're doing all add up to winning. Um, uh, there's a question in the chat about what tools did we use for the early warning system? Are you using any AI to help automate this? I'll touch on this a little bit at the end. I do it manually. I do it in spreadsheets. I think that we can talk, there are a lot of AI tools out there that will help with this planning stuff. But this is something where I think a black box is actually not appropriate for the solution space. Although your mileage may vary, but I do this manually, especially at smaller companies where there aren't that many assumptions to play with and aren't that many levers to play with. Okay, so a couple of different altitudes of planning to get a little bit into the how that Tei mentioned. I plan at two levels, and I'm using the word plan to be this sort of umbrella idea across, and two different types of plans. Short-term one called a forecast, which is bottoms up, and that looks out 1 or 2 quarters to start, and maybe a little bit longer. And that answers the questions, what outcomes will deliver next quarter? Your inputs are actuals plus some short-term assumptions, and your outputs are a financial statement. I also like to do a top-down plan pretty early. This might be a 1 or 2 year model, maybe a little bit longer. That answers a different question. It's sort of less grounded in exactly how many humans are we going to have next month or whatever, and more tries to tell the story of where are we going to go in N years. What is our AR going to be? What's our burn? What's our net retention going to be? And that helps you figure out. And ideally, those meet in the middle. And your forecast shows you what do we think we're going to do next. The model shows where do we need to go, and that can help you figure out where to put your bets or how much risk to take.
Jeff, if you could just go back to that prior slide for a
Yes, sir.
second. I mean, to maybe talk, if you could talk more about like the horizon, the inputs and the outputs, um, because one is this bottoms up and the other is tops down, as you mentioned, but they are quite different. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing for a small, like in general, if you think about this type of work, again, whether we're using AI or not, you have to get good at predicting the near future before you can feel confident in your long-term plans. How can you predict next year if you can't predict next month? Also, for small early stage companies, what's job number one? Don't run out of cash. Manage your resources well. Like we need the oxygen to keep going and keep operating. So at a million ARR or so, um, uh, the most important thing, in my opinion, is to be able to look out 1 to 2 quarters. What do we think revenue growth is going to be? I'll get into a little bit about how we do that in a second. What do we think cash and cash burn is going to be? It's most important to get really good at predicting that so that you understand the levers and so that you can feel confident in making bigger swings and bigger bets and understanding the dynamics there. At the same time, though, I also like to build the multi-year model to start to understand key assumptions and their drivers about where do we want to go. And that can be really, really easy. That can just be like straight lining out revenue growth and cost growth. It can be really easy, but like, what does our short-term forecast add up to? And are we happy with that? But really critically early, don't rely on the predictions of your model. You've made them up. They're not super useful. Um, Later, this stuff starts to get more it starts to get both more complex, which we'll talk about, and also you can start to rely on as you get better at predicting the short term, you can start to rely on your model for mid and long term things like the need to add on the telemetry pipeline and honeycomb that I mentioned. Is that sort of what you're getting at, Tahi?
Right. And this is where I think Jeff's approach is quite different. Is that I work with a lot of early stage finance people, and they really focus on short-term forecast, cash and revenue, so short-term visibility, and really don't invest in the model because the belief is that building a long-term model is just not going to be accurate at this time. On the other hand, we work with more larger company CFOs that come into early stage startups and they prematurely push a model because they want to have that long-term view while the model is just not accurate at this point. And what I find unique about your perspective, Jeff, is how you're able to have these two very different financial views at the same time. One, this bottoms up forecast, the other, this sort of top down assumption based model, and being able to integrate those two views at the same time within the company and how to balance it appropriately.
Great.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Appreciate that. I do think both types of thinking are important, right? Like to really generalize it, it's are we going in the right direction? That's the model. And then are we making good micro adjustments along the way, which you have to do every day. And that's what the forecast helps you. And I think you need both to do this really well.
Mhm.
Um, a couple of keys, no matter what tools you use or process you use, or even really shape of your business. I talked about getting good at the short term first. I suspect that's self-evident. Also, make sure you're having the right kind of surprises. Or in fact, try to have the right kind of surprises because again, nobody has a crystal ball, especially in the short term. So miss by being too conservative. So what do I mean? If the growth of your top of funnel was really tepid the last couple of months, assume it'll be really tepid for the next couple of months, unless you've already put out a blog post that's gone viral, or you're having incredible success with this paid channel or something like, unless you can already see the action that you took, um, uh, then try to not assume things will just get sort of hockey stick better, especially in the short term. And then most importantly is check your assumptions against reality, and adjust. There's a question in the chat about early stage companies and how often would you recommend they review and change their financial strategy. Financial strategy, I'll come to in a second. In terms of like your forecast, what ARR and cost do we think we have? Check it monthly. Every month, look at how you did, especially for revenue and cost. What did we think? Where were we wrong? Okay, there's something we don't understand well enough about our business. Do that every monthly. Financial strategy or strategy in general, hopefully you're changing that much less. But it's important to understand if it's not adding up to where we want to go in the model, perhaps that's the thing you should consider. All right. I'm gonna get a little bit out of the why and a little bit into the how here for a few minutes. There will be spreadsheets or snapshots of gently anonymized spreadsheets. And so I'm going to talk about one part of it, which is the new business forecast. So new business as opposed to expansion, as opposed to churn, and then also this is the revenue or ARR side, as opposed to the cost side. Should probably caveat that I'm mostly talking about most of my experience here is in B2B SaaS. If you're doing consumer or you're doing something in the real world, hardware, the principles are very similar, but the specifics are a little bit different. So I'll be inflecting this with kind of a B2B SaaS lens throughout. So what I've got here is a super simple funnel: signups to activations to opportunities to deals. Um, as founders, I'm sure you understand your customer journey. It might look like this, it might look a little bit differently, but the first part is, what is your customer journey at a high level? What are the stages or milestones that we have? So the first part is like write down what has happened. And here you can see I took signups, and here's some fake data about the last 3 months for number of signups, activations, opportunities on down, how much AR that converts into, and then a really simple non-cohorted conversion, just dividing this into this and this into this and this into this. What if you don't know this stuff? What if you don't know your funnel or you don't know the actuals? Um, uh, your model will be less good. Your forecast will be less good. You can fill it in with gaps and assumptions here, even for the recent history. But the more you can ground it in data, in this case, from HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever your Google Analytics or whatever tools you're using, the more you can weigh it in actual stuff, the better it's going to be. So got the history here, the actuals of my new business forecast. I got it in a very exciting spreadsheet, and then add in the future. Okay, and so look here. Here's a nice growth for signups and activations, etc. Okay, but this is the crystal ball. How do we do that? And this gets down to what assumptions do you make? And I like to literally document them here in my plan. And you can see here, again, this is all mock data, but you can see some of the assumptions, some of the types of assumptions you can make here. But again, think about, your business in the short term. So we had this many signups month over month the last few months. What did we do here in August, September? Did we launch new content or a new strategy or invest more in some channel? And we can start to see things ticking up. Okay, might be good to assume some modest growth or even high growth. If you don't have anything that you've changed, it's probably pretty smart to assume it's going to be flat. Similarly, and I did this by projecting these conversion rates out. This one says for conversion rates, I chose last 3 months average here for signups to activations. I might do that if we haven't done anything to make the sign up flow better, or the support team to help folks along the way, or whatever it is. But like, think about these levers of your business so you understand the funnel. Think about the levers, and then think about what trend is the most reasonable to predict, and write it down. And you can see I've done these for these various assumptions. And what I get is I get some future ARR coming out the end. And you'll imagine as you get to a giant company, this can get super complicated, but something as simple as this can help you understand, okay, we want to grow revenue, or we think we can grow revenue to we're adding, in this case, a couple hundred K of ARR every month. That's awesome and healthy. We're going to to do that, we're going to need more signups or better conversion or a higher price, a higher average price. We're going to need one or more of those things to be true. Where do we think it's going to come from? And then as we get into like running the team and actually doing the work, where are we going to put our energy and investment? Where do we think it's going to have the most payoff? Um, so look at the past, think about what assumptions you want to make about the near term, write them down, project it out, and then next month, check it. I just talked about new business. It's true. The same. I won't go into details here. No spreadsheets on this slide, but it's funnels all the way down or turtles all the way down. You can do this same funnel thinking across. You do it for expansion, right? The dynamics are who are your customers? What are the renewal dates? What expansion rates do you predict? You do it for churn, same idea. Now your model can spit out net revenue retention. And then you can do this for multiple new business funnels. You can do it by channel or product or region or segment or whatever, and anything else. You keep layering in different ways to look at your business and different motions that you have on the revenue side. Okay, so where does this go, and how much do you need to do, and why? What do you get for it? So where this kind of, and again, I'm mostly talking about the forecast here, not the longer term model. Where this goes, what you want when you're done is some sort of view like this. Lots of numbers. The numbers are all BS that they don't matter specifically. But if you look here, I've got kind of a whole P&L from revenue at the top to down to operating income, profit, and cash change. What we just mocked out here, the new business funnel, that would give us some of the gap between beginning and ending area here. Obviously, expansion and churn. There's other things you would have to add in. And I've got my actuals and my forecast, and I've got them sort of trended out here. And then I have a guess of where I'm going to end at 2025, putting that all together versus what I thought. And this might start to look like a board slide that you may have seen or Tehi may have asked you to do, where I can see the trend of where the business is going, where it's been, where I think it's going, what those growth rates are, where that's going to be compared to my plan. We talked about how to do that for ARR. Obviously, to do this well, you need to do something similar for cash and expense. And that's really going to, how much you do that and how much time you spend on that and who does it is really going to vary based on the size of the business, which is where we'll kind of go next. Tahi, anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah, I would just say that this view, although it looks very simple, it's very important because it just projects the key things, which are cash and growth rate, basically.
That's right. Um, it can be complex. I think you can start very simply, and I think you can start with breadth first. So all across the business from, I guess, breadth first from revenue through to cash, and make some really general assumptions along the way, and then depth later. And there's really no end to the depth. So here's a really busy slide. At 1 million ARR, I think you can start with for revenue. Simplest way is just count logos, count number of companies in and out, and use an average amount. For expenses, which lead right to cash, the basic way to do this is to take a headcount file from Gusto or whatever tool you use that has, name, date, role, compensation. Stick it into another tab in that same spreadsheet where we did the new business model. And let's say if that cost of that team added up to $1 million last month, and we spent $1.5 million last month, well, the rest of your costs are a 50% uplift. And next month, when you add a couple people and your cost is $1.2 million, well, your total expense is going to be 1.8. That is really, really simple and has some error in it, but is honestly, for a very small company, is good enough to understand your zero cash date and the growth rate of your costs. And you can do it in like minutes. It is not hard. From that, you can get cash, and you can't do all of this from just doing that. Like you're not going to get cost of revenue, but you're going to be able to get ARR and cash, which are the most important things. So get the breadth first. In terms of who can do this, anybody. Founders can. I taught myself. It's not that hard. Anybody can do this. Though obviously you can hire finance people full time or part time. By 10 million ARR, you're probably going to want a VP of finance, whatever the title is, a finance leader. And by 10 million ARR, just doing cash the way I described is not going to be sufficient. Just the numbers are too big. The cost of being wrong is too big. And so then you want to do detailed spend build up, which looks like tabs in a spreadsheet, the way that I've learned to do it for your key expenses, which are probably marketing programs, cloud, rent, software, and travel. That's probably 90 some percent of your expenses outside of people. And you're going to want to do build ups for those. Same idea. Start with the actuals. Make some assumptions on if they're going to go up or down. Project them out to the future. You're also going to want to model in things like comp increases. You're going to want to have an output of your model be unit economics. So how much sales and marketing dollars did we spend to get each new logo? This is when you're going to want a sales productivity model because one of the biggest for most B2B SaaS companies I've worked with, the sort of biggest flex in how we think about investment is in sales and how much sales do we hire up because you bring that cost in before revenue, obviously. So when is the right time to put the throttle down on more salespeople? You're going to want a sales productivity model as an output to do that, etc. By 25 million, maybe you're outgrowing spreadsheets. Although I've used them at 50 plus. Probably is going to be an FP&A team working in your finance team. This is full time. What they do is manage this plan and the assumptions, and then work with the stakeholders and teams like marketing, engineering, product, sales, etc., to help them understand their limits for what they can spend, the efficiency and output of the investments they've made, etc. Um, and at this point, you're going to want budgets for each department. Think about the cost buildup we talked about. You just do it for marketing, do it for sales, do it for engineering, etc., and have it all add up. That's a budget, and you go from there. So breadth across, and then you can get as deep as you need to and as appropriate for your business. Obviously, somewhere in here, you don't want to be doing this yourself anymore, and you're going to want a team, a finance leader, or a team to start doing this with you and for you.
So, Jeff, there's a huge amount of information that you just conveyed in this one slide, but it's critical. I'm just wondering if this would be an accurate summary. In other words, at 1 million ARR, the key is you want a simple forecast of revenue based on the customer journey, and you want to forecast expense and cash. At 10 million ARR, we're trying to transition to an accurate predictive model. And so a key thing there is to validate the key assumptions in that model, like the sales productivity number, renewal or churn, or new lead conversion. Just trying to validate the key assumptions so that you know that you can build your model. And then with that model, you can go into more departmental budgeting as the company gets bigger.
I think that's right. The other thing I would add on that is a complexifier is the number of consumers of the plan. Here, it's the founder, maybe a finance person if you have it, and the board. Here, there's starting to be quite a lot of internal stakeholders. Your sales exec and your marketing exec and your engineering exec need to know the boundaries in which they can operate. Here, there's even more. It's directors and managers and the SDR team lead. And so the the consumers of it, more and more people need this to understand what decisions can they make and what can't they make. And that's another area of complexity that goes up and why you need humans to do this as it gets bigger. More and more people need to consume and understand and use the information in a way that works for them.
And in terms of this sort of the around the 10 million where the model is getting validated, I'm just wondering if these are the right key assumptions. One is sales rep, assuming you're using salespeople, so it's not a PLG motion.
Right.
This is a sales rep. The first is what you said about sales productivity. What that really is in particular sales rep attainment. Ramp and retainment. So what's the ramp of new reps and what is going to be their attainment? And then the next is the reps need to get fed. So it's about leads. And so it's about new lead generation and then conversion. And I know you've done in the past really good cohort analysis uh, of leads by quarter and then looking at the cumulative conversion.
Yeah.
And then the third would be with existing customers, renewal and net revenue retention. And then lastly, as you pointed out, is the delivery of new products hitting certain milestone delivery dates so that it can generate future revenue. I wonder if those would be, or if you would change those or add new assumptions.
No, I think that's right. And I appreciate you simplifying and generalizing. Just to add the tension to it, I'll make it complex again. There's a ton of nuance. So for us at Honeycomb, for example, like you in your explanation, which I think was very good, started with sales rep productivity. In the early days, especially at Honeycomb for us, it was not close to the most important thing. And that's because with our revenue, we had effectively a power law distribution. We had a handful of really big customers that would break all the sort of average attainment models. And we had huge expansion dynamics. Like once we landed, we could get a really, really large expansion, sometimes millions of dollars. And so the number of salespeople, the number of hands in the sales team was not the constraint for us. And so it mattered, but it didn't matter as much as the number of new logos coming in because we knew we could expand them. The more shots we got, the more we could get these sort of large expansions. And so what you said is right, but I think that you need to be a little bit careful and this is why I think that this is nice to build iteratively and understand your business and your assumptions because a nice 1, 2, 3, 4 rubric, like you said, is a good starting place, but there's going to be a ton of nuance based on the exact dynamics of your business and which of these things you are going to ultimately care about.
Yeah. And so then at Honeycomb, at what point did you feel like the model was accurate? You had confidence in the model.
Yeah, I think that by about 25 million, myself, and by that time we had an awesome VP of finance named Chris Wasik, and he had a team.
Mhm.
Um, we could tell you what next year revenue was going to be. And maybe this is inside baseball. The board would be like, we would like it to be higher. And we were like, great, this is what it's going to be. And now, of course, it could be higher. Like again, the telemetry pipeline example is we are going to need to change something, or else it's going to be this number that is lower than we wish. But by about 25 million, we were really good at predicting it. Now, we had a long sales cycle and a smaller number of large deals compared to I'm working with another company right now that is a $5,000 ACV. And so especially on the revenue side, we were able to predict it really well. And again, I think it's going to vary based on how dynamic your business is.
Okay.
All
By the
right.
way, Jeff,
Yeah.
you got a question here that you may
Yeah.
want to take a look at in chat.
Yeah. I'm going to get to, it's about leveraging fractional
Yep.
CFO. I'm going to get to that, I have a slide on that for the
Okay.
end, sort of how to do this. Um, okay. So that was a lot of how and a lot of telling you to go, don't use tools, get in a spreadsheet. Reminder of why. We've touched on a lot of this stuff, but reminder of why this is worthwhile to you, I think. Easier and more useful board decks. Make better informed investment decisions. Is it okay to hire these 5 reps or these 10 engineers right now? Empower your leaders to go faster. Like we all want to hire leaders that can make good decisions. Help increase their judgment and their sense about what good is. And you've also done the hard part of building the model for your next fundraise. Once you do this, you've made that a lot easier. And as a friend of mine said, if something is hard and painful, do it early and do it often. And I think that principle really, really, really applies here.
Yeah, and I just really want to emphasize the second point that Jeff put in a slide about helping founders make better informed investment decisions. Because in a way, that is one of the key decision roles of a CEO is to make decisions like should you hire, should you spend more on sales and marketing or not, or when. So. And so to make those decisions properly, you need to understand the financial implications.
Right. I'm working with a founder right now who keeps asking me, is it okay to spend X? Is it okay to add a PR firm for our launch, for example? And um, uh, I've just started, so I don't know the answer yet. But where I want to get to with him is uh, when we do it, this is the impact on our runway effectively. And so, if the launch is one of the top two or three most important things this quarter, and we think PR magnifies it, my opinion is it's worth moving the zero cash date in by this much. And if it's not one of those things, my opinion is it's not. And as an advisor, a consultant, I want to be able to say that. When I was an off full-time operator, we were making those decisions all the time.
Mhm. So, is there any particular advice you would give a founder on how to make those decisions better? As at the earliest, when the model is less clear. So let's say around 1 million, 5 million ARR.
I have very generic advice. Yes, but it's very generic. I'm a big believer in start less, finish more. That rather than have 10 bets that we don't put much behind, to have one or two that we're really going to see through, and we're going to get time to learning as quickly as possible. And so, um, if you're confident, again, this example, this PR firm, if we're confident it's important for our launch, we should do it because we do literally have the cash to do it, and we should do it. If we aren't, because of the circumstance of that particular business, we should probably not spend more money right now. So if it's critical to one of the top two or three things, we should do it, and if not, we should hold. And I try to hold to that even as we get bigger. This only gets harder as once you have lots of cash, it actually gets harder because everyone's like, we've been starving team three for 2 years. I need four more people for team three. And you should still, I'm sorry for the people in team three, but you should probably still, maybe not starve, but certainly not overfeed team three, even then when you have resources, because you just don't want to take your money and peanut butter spread it across all the things. You want to keep it on the things that you think will make the most difference to your customers and to your top line. It gets easier and it's easier when you have few resources because it's like, dude, we're going to run out of money. Later, when it's all about sort of theoretical things, it's much harder, but I think that principle still applies. And we use that. And then the way this planning we're talking about, it informs those with data. It doesn't tell you the answer, but it informs them with data.
Okay.
All right. So where can it go bad? Set it if you set it and forget it. If you make a plan and don't look at it, it's a waste. It's inventory. The most important thing is comparing your assumptions to actuals on a regular basis. By default would be monthly. That where you're wrong, where they're off, that's your early warning system. Hey, something's not going like we thought. Should we adjust? You're going to make bad assumptions. You don't have a crystal ball. It's okay. If you're too conservative, perhaps it's time to go faster. Spend more, raise your sights, etc. When there's bad news, consider changing something or slowing spend. One of the things at Honeycomb that we did all the time that I think was very frustrating to our managers, although in hindsight, I think they would be happy we did it, is we did this a lot. And so we would go to the managers and say, you know, we told you last time you could hire 10 people in the second half of the year. Sorry, it's six. We're shaving your future hires. And we're doing that because we're trying to keep our ARR growth and burn within a ratio. It's frustrating to managers because they just want clarity. Can I hire 10 or not? And we chose to give them a budget, a hiring budget that was subject to change, as opposed to, yep, go for it. But if there's bad news, we're going to hit a wall and have to do a riff. And we did lots of micro adjustments and we did not do a riff. Um, uh, and don't worry about the cost of pencils. So, um, actually, will talk about pencils. My old boss used to say this: "There's a biggest trap for new managers or new middle managers." I know founders are a very different cohort. the plan will look very concrete in terms of numbers. This costs X and this costs Y. Um, you have to establish some judgment and exercise some judgment about what is material. And for a B2B SaaS business, office supplies are not material. Let your office manager use his or her good judgment and get the right office supplies. Don't worry about it. It is almost literally a rounding error for the success of your business. And so don't focus on the big things, not the cost of pencils.
Jeff, could you share an example of where the assumption turned out to be, wrong or an early warning sign based on, in this uh, looking at an assumption?
Yeah, uh, I mean, all the time.
But just one as an example.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can see the fake ones here. If
Yeah.
I think about, if I think about real life, uh, two startups ago, we assumed our churn would be X, and what we learned was that it was 9 months to fully activate people on the product. The time to value was 9 months. And so our churn was quite a bit bigger than X. So it broke everything about our business. Bad problem. Churn
Yep.
is a bad problem. And so we made a bunch of adjustments. We started an onboarding team to help people onboard better. We started paying salespeople more for 2-year deals because we didn't want them to be only 3 months of value at the renewal date, right? And so, like, I mean, all the assumptions are wrong individually, is the point. The interplay between them lets you see what you need to adjust and where you have slack and where you don't.
Mhm. So
Yes,
in a
and
way, if the model turns out to be wrong, it actually could be quite effective in giving you guidance on how to change the business. Because if the model is wrong, it's usually based on certain assumptions. And so
yes,
investigate those assumptions.
yes,
Yep.
uh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a big part of what finance or COO or BizOps leader does after the sort of basics are set up and the bills get paid and whatever. That's a big part. It's a big part of what do they do? Where do we need to um, inject ourselves to help make this work better and work the way it needs to work?
Mhm.
All right, let's start to wrap up here, and obviously we can take whatever questions are at the end. So how do you get started? There's a question in the chat on what are my thoughts on leveraging a fractional CFO early on. Full disclaimer, I am doing this work today. Since I left Honeycomb about 6 months ago, I've worked for a half dozen companies already in the last 6 months doing this type of thing on a fractional basis, including starting that early. I think it's a pretty good idea. But there's a couple ways to get started here. The first one is you can do it yourself. SaaS isn't rocket science. Y'all do much harder stuff every day. I taught myself it's not that hard. But experience helps, and this is work, and you're going to need a team or leaders to do this at some point. And so the options are you can hire a finance fractional. There's a ton of fractional CFOs, COOs, et cetera, out there. And again, I'm doing this work now. You can hire an accounting firm to do it. They will do your books and also usually have a CFO on staff that you can get their advice. I think the upside of that is I like using firms when I want a team. So when person leaves, it's their job to fill it, etc. The downside of that is you don't get as the CFO will answer the questions you ask, but won't help you as much with the early warning system.
Yeah, because I
The,
think, Jeff, you're unique in that perspective, is that I haven't found many finance people that have gone through this 100x growth from 500,000 to 50 million ARR.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I think that
Because it's not just setting it up for today, but how we can set it up for tomorrow.
I really appreciate that. I think that I'll be both modest and immodest. The modest part is most of what I'm talking about is I did not make it up. There are lots of people that can do this stuff. The immodest part is I think that what that experience helps me do is my judgment of about what's material is pretty well honed, and my ability to tell the story to a founder or a team is pretty well honed. And I think that's a lot of what that experience gives you. There's really smart investment bankers that are 22 that can make these models faster and better than me. But I think that how we affect the change is is the next part. And there was a question earlier on about can we throw AI at this stuff? My disclaimer is I have never tried, so I don't know. And certainly someday we will be able to. I guess my caution is beware the black box. A lot of the value in this is actually learning how your business works. Again, think about the thing I said about Honeycomb, about where our uh, sales attainment wasn't actually the thing because of these dynamics we had about large deals and power laws and expansions. And it took us a minute to sort of really understand that and really be able to distill it down into action. And so I think that if you can definitely take your actuals and some chat and throw it at an AI model or AI tool and have it spit out a great future looking income statement. But if insofar as that's a black box, I do think you lose some of the value. But the disclaimer is I have not tried to use these tools for this, and there are certainly a bunch out there on the market. I am more artisanal here and sort of build it as we go, but that helps me and helps people to do it this way. Really understand the business. What you become the expert on the company pretty fast is what you become. And that's what I got. So end prepared remarks. Oh, yeah, and that's me. I'm out there in the world, and if you want to talk about this stuff, I am easy to find on email or LinkedIn or anywhere else.
So I think, Jeff, to summarize what your approach is really three steps. The first is at a very early stage, build both a bottoms up forecast and a tops down model. So the bottoms up forecast is really to look out, how we're going to do this quarter or next quarter, but continually have this sort of longer term model. The second point is don't worry if the model is not accurate, because in fact, at the early days, the model will be inaccurate. But
Part of the process. It's part of the process.
is part of the process of really understanding the assumptions. But when the predictions are accurate, I would say is when magic can occur and the business really becomes predictable, which investors love. And the third point is really watch the model assumptions carefully. Um, Either because it's not working in the beginning or it works and it doesn't work in the future, because the model assumptions are a great early warning signs about the business.
I think it's a great summary.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And Jeff, I really appreciate your doing this. And more importantly, I appreciate all your help with Honeycomb,
Oh,
especially when I went through a couple of bad scaling experiences. I really appreciate all the micro adjustments that you did along the way rather than doing layoffs and other issues. So this has been great. Thank you very much.
thanks.
Oh, and
Appreciate it.
one last thing is
Yep.
people asked about if they could access your slide deck.
Yeah.
If,
Absolutely. We can get it out through the storm afterwards. Absolutely.
okay,
There's
that
also a
sounds great.
couple more questions. There's one in the chat and there's one in the Q&A. Can you guys see those?
The Q&A one I got to
Okay, perfect.
about when it should change. In the chat, is there anything I would have done differently? I mean, especially at early stage. I mean, there is a lot I would have done differently. I think that not so much about the process of the modeling itself, but I think that particularly I've done this 6 or 7 or 8 companies at this point, especially for the first few. I think the mistake I made a couple of times was too much sales too fast. Too much sales hiring too fast was the mistake I made a couple of times. And that salespeople being too busy is like the number one best problem to have. And on the other side, if you hire salespeople too quickly, Honeycomb, or let's not make it about Honeycomb. If you're doing enterprise sales, a higher ACV, it is often 12 months or more to full attainment. So you're taking all that cost early. And salespeople, rightly so, they're loud. My customer needs this. We need this enablement. I need leads. They are like it's a ton of management to support them, which again, their job is to say, hey, business, we need this to drive the revenue. No judgment there. But I think earlier in my career, a couple times I allowed us to bring on too many salespeople too quickly, basically too optimistic there. And again, salespeople that are too busy, the best problem to have. Let your salespeople be in accelerators, make a bunch of money. Good for them. Hire behind that.
That sounds great. Well, this has been great, Jeff. Thank you very much for
Thanks.
your time and all your work preparing the slides. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was fun. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye bye.